Hello,
Hello.
can you hear me?
Yeah,
All right, I figured this out.
perfect.
Uh,
Have you done many of these Zoom meetings yet?
just for podcasts, but no, I don't really have anything anything else to Zoom
Yeah.
really at this point.
Well, that's good. Thank
How's
you for your time today, Evan. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm flattered you reached out.
Well, if it's okay with you, I always ask permission if we can use any of the video for our promotion of the episode on YouTube or whatever. If not, that's totally okay too.
Yeah, I'm totally good with it. By the way, you do an excellent job. I was
Oh,
checking out your podcasts and I was like, gosh, she's like a Terry Gross. You're great at the interview. I
really?
wish I
Thank
I wish
you.
I had your acumen.
That means a lot. Thanks so much. Because I'm pretty green at this. So it's kind of
Some people are
something,
natural.
kind of started
You're
it right
natural.
before. Thanks. Right before the pandemic was when it was coming together to do this podcast, but then that just happened and gave me something to do. Right.
Have you ever
Something
done
to focus on.
voiceovers before?
No, no. I
You
do.
should look into it.
Maybe, yeah. That would be something fun to do. I would enjoy
I've
that.
listened to a book you read. Can you read some books for me? That way I can put them on tape, and that would be a great.
Sure. No problem.
All right, good deal.
Okay. So on Dope Nostalgia Podcast, we talk about what happened in the 90s as well as what you're doing now. So it's a good mix of the two. And yeah, we'll go from there.
So you're expecting me to remember the '90s, is what you're saying.
Okay. You were kind of like the Together thing was very much 2000s, wasn't it? Like 99, 2000?
Let's see. I think we shot in either 98 or 99,
Mhm.
somewhere right in there, and then the film, and then the series started 2000. So yeah, it was kind of cross the Y2K time period.
Yeah. So I'm cool with like things that happened in the early 2000s because so much of it started in the 90s. And I mean, the boy band thing was huge for me and a lot of our listeners. So when you guys set out to do Together, was it to be a parody originally? Was that the idea? Or was there a point where you all felt we're an actual band now?
So so I got the script through my agent, and it was just a regular movie audition. The script was brilliantly written. The Gunn cousins, the whole dynasty of the Gunn family, they're writers,
Yeah.
movies. They're the who's who of a lot of the hit movies. But because it was just, I think their big foray, Mark and Brian Gunn, and I thought it was one of the funniest things I ever read. And ironically, I was doing theater at the time. I was doing the Fantastics off Broadway, and
Nice.
I remember my agent had just moved offices. The script came to me late. It was very 11th hour, and I was really debating whether or not I had the energy to do the audition. They wanted me to put myself on tape, which back then you always came into the agency office to do that, and they had a
Mhm.
facility for that. And I was like, really, I've got to tape myself. And I remember a friend of mine was like, just do it. I'll help you. So we literally went to an abandoned building above, which is the space above the theater before a show.
Mm.
Um, did one take of the audition scene, and I think I had to sing a song. I want to say I sang "It's So Hard to Say Goodbye to Yesterday," Boys to Men, or I might be getting a couple of them confused. No Diggity.
Ah,
Classic
so
90s
good.
song. Um, yeah, I sent the tape off, and then I don't want to say I forgot about it, but at that kind of stage of my life, I was just kind of doing, it's a numbers game, and I was doing a million things at once, and then all of a sudden I remember, no, God, things happen really fast. Sorry, I'm kind of reliving it. I really haven't thought about a lot of this. And then I got really lucky and booked my first big film, which was Shaft. And I was playing one of Christian Bale's obnoxious Upper East Side friends in the opening scene with Mekhi Phifer and Samuel Jackson. And it was all very overwhelming. But I remember I was sitting on on set, of Shaft, and my agent called and was like, "Hey, you got the part in this Together thing, and it's going to be a big deal. It's MTV's first made-for-TV movie. It's the Spinal Tap of boy bands," which is essentially the question that you asked. I'm sorry, kind of long-winded, but
That's cool.
it was designed to be the Spinal Tap mockumentary, very much like Spinal Tap, but of boy bands, which of course was the biggest thing at the time.
Yeah.
And so I actually I left shooting Shaft and went straight to Vancouver, and we shot the film, I believe, in like 3 weeks. And then we kind of all just sat back and were like, is this thing going to happen and be a big deal or not? And then when it aired, it was such art imitating itself. We manufactured this big premiere if we're a real band. So the way they marketed us was very much on both sides. The pretending that we were a real band, all the while we were making a band, or making fun of boy bands in the mockumentary format, so to speak. It was also, I say making fun of, but it was very much a loving tribute at the same time. It's very weird. It was everything all at once, you know?
Yeah.
And then it turned into a TV series. The success of the movie, they called, and I almost didn't do the series. The film had opened some doors for me, and I was really seriously considering some other options. And MTV is not known for paying people very well, and so they assumed I was turning down because of the low money, and I was not. So eventually they brought up the money, and I was like, okay, I'd be stupid not to take this. So that's how the series kind of happened, and the rest, as they say, is history. Yeah.
Were there any? I'm glad that you're getting a chance to, talk. It's been a while, hey? You haven't done any interviews about Together in a while.
I don't do a lot about them, no. And it's so funny because I've changed careers so many times since Together. I became a TV host. I did my own radio show. I've done so many different things that and again, it's been 21 years, 22 years, something like that. It's
hard to imagine.
I've had children since then. Yeah.
We're definitely going to be talking about the shows that you're on now and what's going on. I wanted to ask,
It'll be a short conversation because I'm not doing it right now. So we can cut to the chase there.
Were there any similarities between you and your character, Jerry?
Yeah, it's funny because, again, I haven't thought about this in such a long time. And my character, Jerry, was, as a whole, we were all kind of playing very sort of naive, dumbed down versions of human beings, as lots of comedy is written that way. But my character, I very much interpreted as this overly caffeinated, intense, taking everything so seriously. And that was very much me back then. And so even the way we shot and the intensity with which I took everything so seriously. It's kind of one of my regrets too. I wish I enjoyed myself a little bit more. But yeah, that definitely came out in the character of Jerry. And at the time I was, my character arc was very much mirroring a lot of what was going on in my real life. And so, because we were so close as a group with the Guns and the production team, we all were very much like a family. Like, I think a lot of our lives were sort of, the storylines were kind of pulled directly. So, I mean, it's now that I think back on it, there was a lot more that was very much reflective of what was going on. I'm definitely very much a Jack Tripper. Now that's an old one.
Well, I remember Jack Tripper.
May he rest in peace. Love him. So I very much, I think he was an inspiration. A lot of physical comedy that was big. Kevin Farley was also really big into the physical comedy. So I think he and I kind of ramped each other up in a lot of those, in a lot of that way. But yeah, I would definitely say there was a lot of me. And what's funny is I always considered myself a musician, but by today's standards, I mean, I can't even believe I got the job. I mean, I can't even believe on so many levels, because I'm not a fantastic singer. Noah was an amazing singer. He played Chad. Alex, gifted musician on so many levels. I mean, I can strum a guitar and I can, keep tune for the most part, but But yeah, it was neat. And there was so much of that aspect of it where we were a manufactured group, though it was for a movie. It was very much the same way a lot of the boy bands at the time were sort of being manufactured. And you had your, this is gonna be hard to touch on without making somebody feel bad, but you had your Justin Timberlakes, who
Yeah.
was like a vocal phenom, you know. And then, you know, you had other people who filled out different characters needed for the group dynamic, you know, but
Yeah.
maybe the vocal gymnastics wasn't their absolute forte. So, you know, I think my character was modeled after maybe a Justin Timberlake, but I certainly was not the vocal phenom of the group. But it was fun. It was great. It was like I got to live out a fantasy, literally from bartending to 2 weeks later, my entire life was upended and my world changed, and
Wow.
playing arenas and doing weird, crazy stuff that you kind of only dream of doing. And then I got to go back to normal again, which is great too.
What an experience to have had. Did you guys do all the filming in Canada, in Vancouver, or just the movie?
We did all of it. In fact, I went and looked at a map of where we were. I was trying to figure out where our studio was. So I lived right off of Stanley Park, which is kind of where all they put everybody who's doing film production in Vancouver. And then I remember we would have to drive, I think it was Burnaby or Burnaby or something like that,
Yeah.
to the studio every morning at like 4 o'clock in the morning. But yeah, everything was shot there. We did our second music video there. The hardest part of breaking up is getting back your stuff. But then like on weekends,
that's my favorite song of all the Together songs. It's brilliant.
is it?
Yeah.
I think I heard you put it on one of your games, which I have children, so I can't use the F word. They're in earshot, but where you played it on episode 40, I think, and nobody could figure it out. It went through all the boy bands. Yes. It was like insane. And I was like, I'm so flattered. And then they're like, Backstreet. And then, you know, I was like, well, no, that was us. That was us.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a fun one. That was a fun one. The car, let's see, the video was the used car salesman theme, which was hilarious. Yeah, we were just all along, you know, for the ride. We kind of were, it was so chaotic and so much, 7 days of work constantly for, I don't know, 2 years straight with no break. And, you know, if we weren't filming the show, we were touring. And if we weren't touring, we were shooting music videos. We weren't shooting music videos, we were promoting. I think we were a little bit used up, but that's why I don't remember it. I mean, it was so much happened in such a tiny short period of time that so many things I'm just like, oh my God. There are episodes, I don't own any of the episodes. In fact, they didn't give them to us. But I undug a couple of videotapes from my mom's collection before, right after she passed, and I was watching them and I was like, I don't remember shooting this episode. I literally was watching it as if it was eyes for the first time. That's how tired I think we all were. It was wild. Yeah.
Well, they say that that's what happens when something like is that heightened in your career, and especially at a young age, it's kind of a whirlwind. So you're not alone on that. I think a lot of people, entertainers, have gone through that.
It's probably a term for that, something like, you know, first job amnesia or something like that. I don't know.
It took me forever to catch on to the QT's last name mashup of Mick and Knight. And I was like thinking about it a week ago. I'm like, Mick, is that supposed to be a play on McIntyre and Knight? Most likely.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that.
Fun fact, Jerry O'Keefe was originally Jerry King, but there was an actual touring artist with Jerry King, and there was a copyright infringement on their name or whatever. We couldn't use it. So my chairback, you know, for the filming, it said Jerry King on it. And then they had to change it, to Jerry O'Keefe. It's kind of funny. And then I made them make me a new one because I was like, come on. And so I've got both in shadow boxes now somewhere. I know, actually they all burned. I had a house fire in 2005, but it was not Jerry O'Keefe. And I don't know where O'Keefe came from. There's probably a lot of things that I probably didn't pick up on that the fans know that were built into the show. Because the Guns were really clever that way. They were really, really good at picking up minutia and embedding things in there. So.
It'll be interesting. Like, I bet you there's a lot of the Easter eggs that the fans notice too. There's this Together episode is actually going to be a two-parter because I spoke with some ladies from another podcast and we talked about the show. And then I got a hold of you. So it'll be
Oh,
interesting to
cool.
see what they have to say. Now, how did
Well,
Kevin
good.
Farley get involved? Some folks don't realize that he's Chris's brother. And I don't know how you can't realize that, but yeah.
So Kevin was I was the last one hired, so it was very 11th hour. So like I said, as soon as I got the job, I flew out the next day. Um, Kevin, I think that everybody auditioned the same way. He might have had a little bit more of like, hey, you should talk to Kevin. He wasn't a complete unknown. He had been in a lot of Chris's movies,
Mhm.
um, and it's tragically Chris had passed away the year before we started filming. So a lot of that was really, really raw, and it was really difficult to watch. You know, him have to cope with something so tragic. And you see a lot of Chris in him, but I don't think what people realize is that's not really fair because Kevin and Chris growing up together created a lot of the shtick that Chris went on to make famous. And
Mm.
so, if he does anything that resembles Chris's material, it's, oh, Kevin's doing Chris. No, it was actually a lot of what Chris did was Kevinisms, and they were very much equal partners in that.
Mm.
Chris just started his career much earlier, and I'm not saying that Chris wasn't a genius. Of course he was, but so is Kevin. And it really came out. There was one episode that I do remember where Kevin had the opportunity to play his own twin brother, and
Oh,
so where he would play two characters, and they would shoot it. One direction. He'd change clothes, reset up, and he'd literally have conversations with himself. And you really saw his genius come out when you could see him do something like that. But
mm.
I do remember on set almost all the time, all of us were trying to make each other laugh. Um, it was just a very funny vibe, high energy vibe. Kevin was always stirring up the kids, as I used to call it, because he was so much older than everybody else.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, heck, I was 30 playing a 17-year-old. I don't even know what Jerry's birthday. It was on the. I'm looking around because I think there is a doll somewhere, and they have a fake birthday on there, and I don't remember how
Really?
old they tried to make me. But yeah, it was weird. I was 30 playing a child, and that also informed my experience when we were out touring because all the bands of that time were actually pretty close in age to Noah and Alex, who were in our band, and they were all really young. I mean, I'd graduated college. I had, been out in New York living my life for, a good 5 years. And then this happened. And so I kind of had a very different viewpoint, almost paternal in a way. I think that also goes along with my personality as being overly intense, being overly taking things too seriously, which I've since rid myself of. Kids will do that to you. Um, but but yeah, it was really kind of interesting. I didn't envelop myself into the moment as much because I think there was so much of like worry that I expressed or felt about the sudden money, the sudden attention, the sudden of everything, that I went very, very much cautiously towards it, and I was worried that those who weren't very, very cautious about it were going to get into trouble, and
Mm.
it was very surreal. That was a very weird tangent that I just took. But again, this is all nostalgic for me because I really haven't thought about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. No. And I think that's a natural reaction too, especially at the age you were at. It was like, okay, so where is this actually going to go? Because you're thinking about your
Right.
future at the same time, right? I
Yeah.
think 30 is
Yeah.
pretty classic age for that.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a late stage game, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. I mean, I think it made it easier for me to transition away. I'll tell you that.
Mm.
Um, just to kind of see it for what it was and see it for the moment. Um, I think I was so busy trying not to get lost in the moment that I missed a lot of it, as far as, really kind of sitting back and smelling the roses.
Mm.
But, you know, there's time for that. We hope.
That's a nice thing about later afterwards. You realize, oh, you kind of take in every moment. a little bit differently, right?
100%. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. My life has been very much, if I started my intensity journey in my late 20s, it is just, I've been mellowing out ever since. So, so it's good. It's good that it all happened. It was fun.
The Britney Spears tour. Now, how much of that do you remember?
Where she did it again. Um, I remember all of it, and it was actually played up. Our participation in her tour, I'll be the first to confess it right now, was far less than what I think it was marketed as. MTV, they're marketing geniuses. That's what our whole show was about, was a play on how you can market anything or anybody into reality. You can, it's the Ricky story, or Ricky Martin. Yeah, Ricky Martin story. You know, we're like, we're going to take this young kid and make him a star. And then they did, you know, and you can do that with boy bands too. So when we toured with Britney, we were very much the side stage where people sat on bales of hay as they came way too early to a Britney Spears concert that wasn't going to start for another 2 hours. So we, you know, we met Britney, we were backstage with Britney a couple of times, but for the most part, we were kind of like the circus sideshow act way before it started. But it was definitely an honor, because I tell you, she is one of the hardest working artists that I've met then or since. I've never met anybody who is that on top of her game at the time. And it's easy to see why. I think the stress, you can see what happens when you're working 18 hours a day at that level of intensity. Kind of bringing it all back full circle to my intensity journey. It's, you know, you got to learn to chill out. But I have mad respect for her and her skills, and yeah, it was fun. And I do remember one incident where our mics went out, so we would sing to track. We weren't lip syncing. And we could actually pull it off, I would say, plausibly. We weren't winning any, you know, harmony vocal competitions, but you know, we were fun. We were the fun, entertaining show. And I remember our tracks completely went out, just like it did in the movie. There was a scene, I think, at a spelling bee very early in the movie, where Kevin, or Doug, I guess was his character's name, he basically tries to carry the show without any music. We all walk off stage and he's out there. But the same thing happened for real on stage. Our tracks went out and we just kept going, and you know, the crowd loved it, and we just completely riffed and pulled it off somehow miraculously. And I think that was probably our crowning achievement of all time. But we had, you know what, the best concerts we did were the radio tours. I had no idea what a radio tour was until we were doing them. And I remember Jones Beach Amphitheater, it's got to be like 20,000 people at this place. And we were headlining this radio tour, which meant that like Enrique Iglesias was going on before us and opening up. It was just very bizarre. To go from complete obscurity in a couple of months. I mean, really, we're talking super compressed time frame, to all of a sudden we would start calculus with our backs turned to the audience. And as each one of us sang, we would turn around as our first time to, and my character was the first one to sing. And I remember I turned around and really saw the crowd staring up truly at the first time. Because when you run out on stage, you're just like, get in position. Yeah. And they were all singing my words, and I almost couldn't function. I just tears. And like that will forever be one of the greatest moments of my life. I can only imagine how that must be if I had written that song. Like if I was a musician that had written this heartfelt song and had people singing back to me my words at a concert. I've got a good friend here in Tennessee who's a pretty big name celebrity of the same time, musician, and he writes those kinds of songs. And I just look at him with awe. I'm like, I can't believe you get to do that every single night. And yeah, So those were probably the more impactful moments, and kind of bumping elbows with Destiny's Child before they became the big thing. And it was a real big moment in history where people were exploding, and I was like, we were all these little planted seeds in the bed, and we were just sprouting, and the machine just took off and ran with so many of them. So that was those good memories.
The
Yeah.
excitement. Oh, wow. Yeah, a lot of cool experiences for sure. And that kind of segues good into the next question where I'm talking about the writing. Because I understand that you did a fair amount of the writing, and these songs are literally great pop music. I think they're written very well. How much did you have to do with the writing?
So I wrote one song on the first album. Alex wrote one song on the first album. I guess I co-wrote. But MTV didn't realize this was going to be, a big success, and would spawn a second album. So by the time we got to album number 2, they were like, "Look, you can help and contribute all you want. We're not giving you any credits," because at that point in time, there was a label in the mix, and they were reaching their hands in to get their chunk of the money. And MTV had their own production for the music, and they wanted their piece. And we sold, I don't know, we printed over 1 million albums total. And to give you an idea of how it worked back then, I maybe saw $3,000 to $5,000 from all those albums total.
Unreal.
The vast majority of that was ASCAP because I had written on the first album. Yeah, so that's how it works. And it was a lot of hands in the cookie jar. But so on the second album, of course, we were all green, and none of us had any leverage to kind of change the dynamic of what was going on. And I'm not complaining. I think it was wrong, but I'm not saying I wouldn't do it again. But we would sit in the studio with these amazing producers, Josh and Brian from KNS, and Vite Ren, and all these. They were Britney's producers, NSYNC's producers, and we would a lot of the songs actually were cut like Britney cuts or NSYNC cuts that we would then have to make fun or turn around and make funny. Ones that didn't land on their finished albums. It was, if they, are going to do it now, they'll record like, sometimes 30, 40 more songs, and just the ones that didn't make it, we would turn around. There was one like I Want to Know Your Name, which was a Britney song. We're like, how do we make this funny? And we just would sit around and just make ourselves giggle with rewriting the lyrics, should I let my package go? Stuff like that. Kevin was great at that. So it really was collaborative. And I think that also helped a lot of the buy-in, even though it wasn't, we weren't going to see a ton of money, from it. I think when we did do the series, we all felt a far bigger piece of ownership of each episode that we would do. Because, like the Monkees, every episode would be based around one of the songs that we put on the album. And that's how we would, wrap up the storyline or whatever. So, with the concert at the end and a neat little package. But yeah, that was probably the part I enjoyed the most was participating in the creation of those things, because, we didn't really ad lib in the acting at all. Most of it was just so well written that it didn't need it. And or nor would it I think in the time frame that we had to shoot would it have worked. It was funny, we were shooting the movie at the same time they were doing Best in Show, that movie, and they were staying at the same hotel in Vancouver, and they're 100% ad-libbed. And of course that's Best in Show was Christopher Guest, who did Spinal Tap. It was weird. Was it Christopher Guest? Gosh, I'm
well, I remember the title of the movie, but I don't remember much more about it. So
they would literally go into these rehearsal rooms. Oh, you got to go watch Fred Lillard and oh my gosh, they were so great. But they would go into the rehearsal. We'd be in a rehearsal room in the hotel learning dance moves, and then we'd go out in the hall to kind of take a break, and we could hear them ad-libbing scenes to try to come up for the next day's shooting. And it was amazing. It was absolute. I mean, it was astounding to kind of be a fly on the wall for some of that. And but that's how Spinal Tap was created, right? So it was, here we were, the next iteration of it, across the room with the guy who created Spinal Tap. Very, very surreal. Very
Nice.
neat. I never really put the two together. I knew that Best in Show was there, but I never really put the Spinal Tap preview to that whole thing. Sorry, I'm rambling.
No, you're good.
But
I mean, and I'm glad you brought up the monkeys too, because that was something I was thinking. Did you guys take anything from what they had already done or think about even what they had already done while doing this show?
I'd like to say yes, but I think Kevin and I were the only ones old enough to even remember what the monkeys were, you know?
Good
So
point.
I'm sure the writers probably did a lot of that sort of background study of what works in this genre and how to do it. But no, I
Mm.
know that's actually a good excuse to go back and watch some monkeys episodes with a new appreciation for sure.
Now, the loss of Michael, I know it hit the fans hard, as I imagine it was really difficult for all of you guys as well. And how has his memory and legacy been kept alive since it's been so many years?
Yeah, that was God, Mike. Michael was he was one of the most incredible human beings. You know, there's a lot of when people pass too soon, regardless of who they were, what they represented in life. You know, there's they get a lot of credit. You know, and I don't know really how to say this. Michael was everything that they said about him, and then a little bit more.
Hmm.
He was truly a living angel, and he lived it every day. I feel so unbelievably blessed and lucky to have been in his atmosphere. He had survived and dealt with so much in his life, and I never saw him complain once. And let me tell you, there was a lot of complaining in that whole entertainment world, and he was just such a standout, such pure joy and energy, and he was so unbelievably talented. That kid could write. Um, he had one functioning lung. His diaphragm was paralyzed the whole time, and he's kicking out
Wow.
songs and recording, keeping up with the rest of us. And it was always terrifying when we would go out on tour because we were required or they demanded that we put on a full show. And that was hard for a healthy 30-year-old in the best shape of my life. Um, not somebody who is been through what he had been through with Hodgkin's lymphoma and the radiation and all that stuff. It was mind blowing that he did it and took care of his family emotionally. I mean, he really was their support system because they were suffering because he was suffering, if that makes
Mm.
sense. And
Yeah.
he was the stand up guy. He was taking care of everybody the whole time, and he still is in a lot of ways. And to answer your question about his legacy, so um, he has the Michael Cuccione Foundation, which raises money for children, basically in the same circumstances.
Mm.
He's profoundly affected so many other charities. In fact, the year before he passed, he was named Vancouver's Man of the Year. It's
Mm.
quite an accolade since he died before, well, right after 16th birthday. Um, and right after, for the first year or two, I would do a lot of charity type concerts, working with his mom, Gloria. Um, Sadly, that we've lost somewhat of touch. We usually reach out every 2 or 3 years, but time will do that. But yeah, man, he was pretty special. He was probably the highlight of the whole Together experience.
I bet.
Yeah.
And like I'm sorry that you guys had to go through so much, but I think like he's just been so inspiring to so many. And I think that's it's important that all of us try to, keep his legacy alive throughout. So we'll be sharing some links to the foundation so people can get involved.
Good. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. Lots to smile
uh,
about.
yeah, that's the thing. Got to remember those good times and the things that put a smile on your face.
Yeah.
Now, who Were you good? Did you guys actually watch any of the boy bands that were going on at the time? Obviously, the big two, BSB and NSYNC, going back to like New Kids and everything. Did you guys have a favorite boy band?
Oh, we got along famously with NSYNC. We did some. I'm trying to think if we toured with them or we just did promotion with them. For some reason, we got paired with them a lot, and they got it. They 100% were down with Together. They thought it was the funniest
Nice.
thing. And yeah, I mean, we studied the boy bands, but we were also spending a lot of time with them.
Mm,
um, Backstreet Boys, we didn't really have a lot of interaction with, although I think they, they respected it. There were, a couple that saw us, I think, as a threat to some degree because they received the "we're making fun of you" angle and not the "we're tribute to you" angle. I think our
mm,
storylines were undercutting in their minds, and maybe fairly so, all the hard work that they put into it, which is certainly not the way I saw our show. I mean, we were not saying, "Hey, look, anybody can do this." But I think there might have been a little bit of rubbed the wrong way.
mhm.
I do remember in New Jersey, Kevin, jokingly, of course, on a radio show, started a fight with the manager of 98 Degrees. That was really interesting. He was trying to challenge 98 Degrees in character to a cage fight, and saying that Michael could take all of them. Of course, 98 Degrees, all these guys were heavy weightlifters,
Yeah.
bodybuilder types, and good looking dudes. And so he was trying to get under the skin. I remember we got a nasty call from their manager while we were on air, which I thought was hilarious. But yeah, man, they were. I love the whole boy band genre. I wasn't a big fan of boy band music going into it, but seeing it from the inside, there's nothing you can take away from those guys. They work their tails off,
Mm,
um, talented, and it takes a lot to be in a room with four other dudes and not want to kill each other in that amount of pressure 24/7. And that's really what they're doing is they're throwing you in a pressure cooker, and saying, "Hey, if you can deal with all this torture, we'll give you a little bit of money, and you'll get to see the world." And it works out if it can work out. I don't know the inside scoop as to how well that's worked out in other bands. I know we fared okay.
yeah.
We had our moments, but yeah, no, that was really neat. Yeah, NSYNC, I would say, that was probably our brethren, if you
Mm,
will. And it's actually funny. Justin lives just up the street from my farm here in Nashville now, and his wife and their kids. So apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
nice.
That doesn't even remotely work in this one. I don't even know where I was going with that. He's a
Yeah.
good old country boy. Let me put it to you that way.
Man of
So
the woods. That's right. That's
his
JT.
farm's much bigger than mine, though. Let me tell you, they did okay.
Now, segueing into what you did after the band, there was a time that you hosted TRL,
Yeah,
guest
yeah.
hosting. Tell us about how that happened.
That was actually a good story. So I was living in New York still, or I still had my place in New York, and we happened to be there. We had already done TRL. Carson had interviewed us a bunch of times, and I think our videos were rotating on the show. And he was doing that Cancun trip that they do every year, or did every year, with
Yeah.
TRL. And I think it's the time he met and fell deeply in love or lust or whatever it was with someone in Cancun. I don't
Is it
remember which
Tara
which
Reid?
Tara Reid. It was Tara Reid,
Yeah.
and he didn't get on the plane to come home, and so they were going to. And now TRL was live, and they were scrambling to find somebody to host the show, and I guess they had gone down their roster of in-house talent and couldn't find anybody. I happened to be literally 10 blocks away, and my agent's like, "Hey, would you do this?" And I was like, "I guess." I'd never done anything like this. Ran. I mean, physically ran, because I couldn't afford the time. I mean, it was like we went live at 3. I mean, this was like 2:48. And so I'm running up the street in my street clothes, get to 1515 Broadway, which is where MTV is, and going up the escalator, they're sticking an IFB in my ear. They're handing me a microphone. I've got cue card guy on the top of the escalator. He's like, this is how we're going to do it. And you're going to do this, and you're going to do that. And I'm like, oh, and by the way, you're going to interview Madonna. And I'm like, what?
What? No way.
It was so much at once that I was like, okay, you know, I didn't have time to get nervous. So I literally was walking into the studio as they were counting the live clock in, and boom, and I literally grabbed the mic, turn around, and that was the first time I'd ever done anything hosting. And that was when I was like, this is what I want to do. It was the energy, the thinking on your feet, the constant engagement, the excitement. You know, there was no sit and wait in your trailer for 30 minutes while they relight the setup and you come in and act for 5. You know, it was what I was born to do. And so from that point on, I had to kind of fill my, you know, and I did some more acting after that, but I was really kind of like, wow, if I can't get one of those jobs, I don't really want to do entertainment anymore. And so I had actually decided to quit acting. I just shot the last film I ever did was Austin Powers. And I told my agent, I'm like, hey, I'm out. And I literally even moved away from California, went back to New York, and I was kind of minding my own business. And then While You're Out, which was a show on TLC, home makeover show. One of the first, there was Bob Vila, which was a how-to show. Then there was Trading Spaces, which broke ground as being an entertainment home makeover show. Mm-hmm. And then the third one was ours, While You're Out, and they were looking for a replacement host. And all of a sudden I'm like, wait a minute, that thing I really love to do, and building, which is what I do. Went to school for architecture. I was never meant to be in this industry, I don't think. So anyway, I kind of put 2 and 2 together, and then kind of jumped ship and went into the world of hosting. So it's a weird transition to make, isn't it? From boy band to carpenter host.
I love how you've taken the 2 things that you enjoy so much and put them together. I think that's the dream right there. You know, with the carpentry, I think, wouldn't that be, you and John Knight should do a show together?
That would be fun. Right?
Because now he's got Farmhouse Fixer.
Yeah.
That'd be cool if you guys pulled off a few episodes together or something like that.
Well, I'll throw this out there. I'm willing to do an episode. I'm not sure I'm willing to do a full show anymore. I got a pretty cush job as dad right now. So I'm digging on that. But the entertainment world is not really super conducive when, you know, you got to hustle. And there's a lot of plane time away from home time that as soon as I had my second son, I realized I can't do it. And so I was actually doing, I was hosting a music show, basically VJ type show for country music television here in Nashville, 2010 to 2013. And then my second son was born in 2012, and they were flying me all over the place. And it was a lot of fun. I was interviewing lots of really interesting, neat people. So it was another kind of combination of things I love to do, but I just couldn't do it, be on an airplane away. So my contract was up in 2013, and I walked away and I haven't looked back, really. There's been a couple things where I've just dabbled, you know, like guest star type stuff, but I'm not interested in the 18-hour days and, you know, the got to be here, you know, in Chicago tomorrow or whatever it was. So it's nice. I think all of this was a journey to find my true calling. Maybe that's what it was.
Being a dad. It's nice that you found such a great balance, you know. I think that's the dream. So we're happy for you. I think that's great.
I've been lucky, you know. I haven't had to, you know, kind of jump back into the fray. And, you know, maybe when this is all this parenting thing is all over and they've flown the coop, I got at least 8 more years on that. You know, maybe I'll do a little bit more and kind of hit my creative niche. But for now, I've been doing a lot of building. That's kind of where I get my creative outlet. The barn built. I've got a farm shop that I'm finishing building out in Leapers Fork here in Tennessee, and that's going to be my my business headquarters where I create custom building and cooking experiences. We had to kind of shutter for COVID, but we
Yeah.
hope to reopen relatively soon.
Great. And people can find your information about it on Instagram, on your Instagram, right? So that if they wanted to check it out.
Yeah, I'm terrible at social media. I'll tell you that right now. I post a couple pictures here and there. I don't think I've posted a Twitter in, I don't know, 10 years, but
Mm.
yeah, the building barn, we've got our own website. Again, it's not really fully functioning right now. I bought the farm just before COVID.
Mm.
And since we weren't taking any clients, we used to rent a local farm. Since we weren't taking any clients for that period of time, I just kind of hung back and been slowly building the farm or the barn out for the business. But yeah, we'll see. Again, it's kind of like, I'm the relaxed guy now. I'm not the super overly intense guy now. So I'm like, whatever, we'll see what happens.
Are you still in touch with the guys from the group?
Every once in a while, I see Kevin would come to Nashville. He was shooting a show here for a while, so I would see him every once in a while. Alex and I touch base quite a bit. I've tried to get a hold of Noah so many different times, but he's changed his number. I don't know. And the guns occasionally, but not so much. There was the idea to do some form of reunion. I think this was when I was still at CMT, and we tried to cobble something together. And every once in a while, Alex, who's still hustling, God bless him, he'll get us a gig, and he'll try to talk us all into joining to show up playing with O-Town or something like that. And I'm like, dude, I just can't. I don't have the energy for that anymore. And we'd have to rehearse and we'd have to do all that stuff. It just sounds so tiring. All that being said, I think if the right opportunity popped up and made it doable for us, but I can't hit the road. So, but yeah, no, you've just reminded me that there's a lot of people I need to reach out to. I need to reach out to Michael's mom again and the guys and just kind of say hi. I don't know. You might have had more luck getting a hold of them than I have.
No.
No?
No.
It's tough.
Well, it's life. It's like that with anything. The people that you hung out with like 20 years ago are sometimes not, they're off doing their own things. So it's just how it works out for everybody.
And I get to watch vicariously. What's that?
Go ahead. Finish what you were saying. I'm sorry.
Well, I just get that, I enjoy seeing them. Like, Alex still works pretty regularly. So I'll just be watching TV and, with my kids, and all of a sudden there's Alex, and, same thing with Kevin. I think Noah kind of, is taking a break, doing his own thing, but it's nice to see them continuing to do what they love. It's so talented that, it'd be a waste if they didn't.
No, that's the thing. And you're in a happy place, and I'm really hoping the same for the rest of the guys. Have you ever considered doing your own podcast? Because you can kind of just do it whenever you want.
Not with folks like you who do it so well.
You'd be great.
It's a crowded space. It's a crowded space. And I don't
That's
really have,
true.
I don't feel like, yeah, that is true. I don't feel like I have a whole lot to say that I haven't said. I wrote a book, which pretty much said just about everything that I felt like I needed to. It's funny, I wrote a book for my kids, which was never meant to be published. And it was just basically, I watched that movie where the dad finds out he's terminal and his son isn't even born yet. Really sad movie. I think Tom Hanks was in it. I can't remember it, but it really messed me up. And so he had left these notes for his kid, right? And, like, don't shave like this, shave like this. And it was really kind of cute, touching. It might've been, very Hallmarky in some ways, but so I just, I got this right after my first son was born. I was like, I gotta write everything down. I don't know. I just, wasn't necessarily I had this sense of doom, but I was just like, I got to do it. And then I was kind of piecing it together and talking to a friend of mine who's a literary agent. And they're like, hey, yeah, let me take a look at that. It'd be really interesting. And originally I was like, I don't know, I don't feel about that. And then they're like, this would be actually pretty useful, because a lot of it was about how to hustle, as it turns out. It's the art of the hustle, basically, of how to get the job. Because I realized with very little talent, I managed to work in a lot of different careers that are very tough to break into. And so my gift or my talent is breaking in. I broke into movies. I broke in, and I'm not an actor. I mean, I never was I remember when I got to New York, going to auditions alongside of, oh my God, the who's who became, I'm trying to think, Primal Fear. Who was Ed Norton?
Okay.
Ed Norton and Primal Fear. So he and I very much were typed very similarly. So we would read for the same parts. And I would just sit there and I'm like, why am I here? This guy, you could just look at him in the waiting room and be like, this guy's an actor. This guy knows what the hell he's doing. He knows what's up. And I just felt like I was some kind of imposter. But anyway, I digress. Not a great singer, but ended up doing a whole bunch of music stuff. Not I sound like Kermit the Frog. You can listen to my voice here and, tell that, but somehow I ended up doing a radio show, So I was like, well, if I was fighting all these, challenges where I had to jump the hurdle of talent and still get in, what was I doing right? And I guess that's what my book was about. It's called Breaking In. And so in it, I kind of follow the trajectory of my career and just the things that I've learned along the way. I cite a lot of books. I'm a heavy reader. I love reading. But anyway, I really, this is the longest winded answer to, have you ever thought about doing a podcast in the world?
I love it.
But no, I think I've said that just about everything I need to say at this point, more than anybody really should listen to.
Well, I think you've done great at all the things that we've seen you in, and I'm really impressed with your talents. So don't cut yourself short. You've done a great job.
I'm not complaining. I had fun, and every once in a while I'll make myself laugh, and that's all that matters. If I can pull that off from time to time, I can make my kids laugh. So I'm like, well, I'm doing something right.
Exactly. And that's what matters the most is friends, family, things like that. So I thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today, because it was really exciting to have you on the show. And thanks for listening to the show.
I'm honored. No, you do a great job. What was I listening to? NWA and Brad Frichetti's interview. That was solid. We toured with LFO, not toured, but we did a show, and I want to say that was one of the most. We were playing a high school. Mm-hmm. It was very early, and I just remember those guys made such a huge impact. I mean, they were 100% legit. They were not buying into their own hype. They were just so excited for the opportunity to do what they love to do. And it was so infectious that I was just like, I get it. I totally get it. And it's just a real tragedy that they lost Rich and Devin. But they're being well represented, and their honor and memory is being well represented as well by Fricchetti. So anyway, great work, and keep doing what you're doing. I hope you continue to get great guests like that. I know you will.
Well, thank you, Evan. And thanks for being a great guest. And maybe we'll talk again sometime. That'd be awesome.
Hey, anytime. I'm here in my wife's office, as you can see.
Sweet. I like the setup. It looks great.
She's a photographer. Yeah. She's really, she's talented. So I get to live vicariously through that ability. So she can do things I never dreamed of. But yeah, I'm a lucky guy.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And I wish you and your family all the best right now. And I'll give you a tag on social media. I know you might not see it, but when this comes out, I'll tag you and everything, and we'll go from there.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, Evan.
Have a good one.
You too. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.